Hey, thanks for checking out our video. Please like and subscribe for more NAGRC content. And while you're at it, follow us on Instagram at NAGRC_PGS.
This conference will now be recorded.
Go through what we're known for are these geoanalytic maps, but I'm going to go through maybe a little bit of a story about why we do these and how I got here, and also what it means in your community. When I present information, particularly about different cities, it's all applicable to any village, town, any human habitation, anywhere we're running municipalities or counties. It's basically a form of government or visualization of government, but understanding lessons that are transferable about how we make place. So the same is true of lessons that are transferable in me. So I have a DNA. This is how I started my life when I was 3 months old. And this is my trajectory, whether I like it or not. I'm going to be my grandfather. And there's not a whole lot of change I can do in that path. Or more importantly, I spent a great deal of my life looking at this guy. Again, a picture when I had hair, but these are my parents, and I've got genetic issues. There's things I can't change in me. I'm genetically Italian, can't change that. I also we have a family history of genetic predisposition to heart disease. So I know that I have to exercise, eat right, and all of that stuff. Otherwise, my dad has had a 7 bypass heart surgery. Like, I don't want that. So I have to work at that. So when you look around at other communities, there's some great things in my father that I emulate, but there are some things that I have to correct myself as I grow older. So these are things that lessons that are transferable in your community. Look to places that have had heart attacks. Look to places that have also had tremendous successes, and learn from those and take those lessons to your community. So that's in a nutshell. What I want to drive home in this point is go back to your community and think of your community as what is your role model, good and bad. What community can you name, city or county or town, that is a model that you want to emulate or a model that you don't want to emulate? So in Asheville, we spend a lot of time worrying about the growth that Atlanta and Charlotte had in their suburban sprawl, and we try to work to not have those same heart attacks up here. So speaking of Asheville, many of you all have probably been here. We're about 3.5, 4 hours away. We're known for our beautiful setting and open landscapes, bluegrass music. We've become really well known for our beer. We've got 40 breweries. That's 2.5 thousand people per brewery in our community. We drink a lot of beer. And like any quirky little mountain town, we have men on tall bikes that eat fire. It's your typical little place. But Asheville didn't start this way. This is how Asheville started back in the early 1800s. This is a shot, or the late 1800s. This is a shot down Main Street. This wasn't that long ago in the span of human civilization, but the same location became this in less than 20 to 30 years. Asheville exploded once the train lines came here. We had the second streetcar line in the entire country. Richmond was the only one that was ahead of us that had a streetcar line. Presidents came to visit, and we grew. So during the 1920s, we grew at 20% in population every single year of the decade, which is ridiculous growth, and became the second largest city in North Carolina. Not a lot of people realized that we were bigger than Charlotte. We were bigger than Raleigh. The only city that was bigger than us was Winston-Salem. Let that wash over you for a second. We were the second largest city in North Carolina. During that period, we achieved the highest debt per capita of the entire United States. We were number one in debt in the entire United States. And as we all know, the Depression hit, and when our books were audited, we thought we had $5 million in the bank. It turned out we had $18,000 in the bank. A little clerical error right there. We're off by a couple decimal points. And our entire city council was indicted, and the mayor committed suicide. That's how we entered the Depression. So if you've ever been through a bad time, Asheville's seen it. Thomas Wolfe, who's a famous American author, wrote this about Asheville. Asheville has squandered fabulous sums. They've flung away the earnings of a lifetime. They've mortgaged those of a generation to come. They have ruined a city. And in doing so, they've ruined themselves, their children, and their children's children. I mean, this is a heck of a thing to say about your hometown. It's even a little worse to put it in a book. So he wrote it down, and he was criticized locally. He was threatened. His family was threatened. His second book was called You Can't Go Home Again, for obvious reasons. Anyway, he was kind of right. Asheville chose to pay off its debts. We're seen as a fairly liberal city, but we're really not. We're Appalachian. So we took out that money. We didn't take part of any New Deal program, and we paid it off in 1976. It took us 50 years to pay off that debt. And so here we are, paying off the last bond payment, and we're celebrating it. We telepromptered in Billy Graham. It's a big deal when Billy shows up. But check this out. It's the third headline in the paper. It's not even the lead story. The lead story is somebody dying in a prison fire 2 counties over. It's not even our prisoner. So this shows you the embarrassment that we had, that we carried this cloud over us, and it also left Asheville fallow for a long time. Now, when we got out of debt, we started doing what other cities did. We started investing in anything we can throw a bond at. So we started doing highways, like every other community, carved a highway through the north side of downtown, which became the Crosstown Expressway. And the coup de grace was when we blew the mountain open and made Bowcatcher Cut. And I love that it's on a postcard, by the way, but here we blew the mountain open. Incidentally, the community fought DOT and proved it was cheaper to do a tunnel through the mountain. And our DOT was like, well, we don't understand how to do tunnel technology. And everybody was like, there is literally a tunnel right here on Tunnel Road, a football field away. Like, if we did it back then, y'all can do it now. Anyway, we obviously lost. On the other side of the mountain, the mall happened and our downtown vaporized. This is the story that every American city had been going through, and we could have learned from that. And we basically mothballed our entire city. Everybody comes to Asheville, they're like, oh, it's so wonderful. It's like, oh, you didn't come to Asheville in the 1990s. This is not too long ago. This is a 1996 Chevy Celebrity sitting there in front of what's now the Haywood Hotel. And like a Greek choir, those children's children would resist. They would say, this will never work. We're not urban. We're not people from Charleston. We're not urbanites, blah, blah, blah. We're mountain people. We're rural. Any kind of bias that we would throw at each other, we would do it. And we wouldn't look at the fact and the reality of that cities are what people build. This is a place for humans. Tens of thousands of years we've had these. There's a much longer story of revitalization and repair that happened. It took city leadership, county leadership, and also folks from the private sector. I'm going to start from the private sector side with Julian. And my connection is straight to Julian. He started a company called Public Interest Projects that put 75% of he inherited $15 million and folded it into a private real estate development company, basically trying to revitalize downtown. So we made places for housing for downtown because the market wasn't providing it. But then also you have to provide that stuff for people to do when they're downtown. So you need restaurants and recreation and stuff like that. So we own the Orange Peel, Salsas, Zambras, Laughing Seed. You've probably eaten at some of our restaurants. But it's basically the simple work of, well, not simple, it's kind of hard, but take a building like this and polish it off. But the other thing that we were doing, because Julian had a social justice mission, is we were constantly communicating with the citizens to get them to understand why it matters for everybody. And it really is a data-driven story. So we could talk about how we feel about things, what we think our preference is in the community. That's great. But let's talk about the data of what's happening. So really taking a step back, if you look at the land is a form of product that the county can't annex the next county over. So the county is really where it starts. And then the cities within it have their own jurisdiction. So those are the real estate portfolios. When you talk to farmers all talk in agricultural terms or in economic terms. What's the labor per acre, water per acre, all that stuff. So let's do the same with this building. So the city did the streetscape project. So thank you, city, for the garbage can, the bike rack, 2 benches, and a street tree. We did retail, office, and residential in this building. That took the building from $300,000 to $11 million of value, which just all with that investment of what, $30,000 for that infrastructure. So that's a 3,500% increase in property taxes on this property. So this is a good return to our community. This is not money we're getting. This is money, go out and buy 3,500% more garbage cans. We don't care. So this asset just grew by 3,500%. Do you have a 401k plan that grows by that? Wouldn't you like that? And the immediate pushback was like, well, Joe, that's your building. We've got this Walmart over here at 20 million. That's double. Okay, fair enough. But how much of the farm did it eat? Well, it took down 34 acres to make that 20 million, while we're doing all of ours on 0.2 acres. So it's not an apples to apples comparison to use the gross number when the land is so different. So when you normalize it to a unit of land per acre, we're producing 100 times more property taxes than they are. We're producing double the retail sales. Who would have thought that a furniture store, a tattoo shop, and a barber shop would produce more retail taxes, but they do. Residents, they don't have any. And we also have a lot more jobs. So when you break things down apples to apples on a per acre basis, you can see what's more productive for you. You know, a really simple way that I framed it for some folks, and I was presenting this in Colorado, you know, about 10 years ago. And I said, look, let me just make this point for you for people in Colorado, because apparently this is too difficult to understand. If you could grow a crop, what would you grow? Wheat or marijuana? And they got the joke. You know, it's just, we do this for cash crops, do it for your buildings. It's the same way. And realize this isn't complicated math. Don't overanalyze this. This is about making things simple and using a form of efficiency analysis that we already use with other terms. When we talk about cars, could you imagine if I said my truck gets 650 miles per tank, it's the best thing ever? You know, you'd laugh at me. You're like, Joe, that's crazy. It's got the biggest gas tank. You know, that's why it's getting the most miles. We say miles per gallon because gasoline is the commodity, not the vehicle. Gasoline is what's driving the vehicle. When you say miles per gallon, the numbers change, and we should all be driving BMW Asettas at 70 miles per gallon. So we're doing this for the efficiency of a product that's like, what, $3? Shouldn't you be doing this for the efficiency of the product that you can't reproduce? Like, the land that you have is limited. So it's kind of weird to me that we don't think these things through, particularly with a community planning perspective and understanding how things operate and how the municipality operates. Now, for you all as managers, you probably get this easier, but I was in 2009, I did a presentation at the Smart Growth Conference in front of, you know, planning professionals and greenway experts and all of this stuff. And I had my hand in the air and I asked the audience, I said, who in this room, and I had this picture over my head. I said, who in this room has read your local tax policies to understand how the assessment process works and all that? No one raised their hand, and I was kind of floored. I was like, really? So you are choosing not to read the tax policy and choosing to be illiterate, where I'm trained as an architect. I like to look at pictures. I read the policies, and if you read the policies, it rewards, you get a benefit to do sprawl. It's that simple. This is the reason why it's happening. We're going broke because our tax system is basically putting fuel on that fire. And so, you know, why do taxes matter? Well, taxes pay for stuff. So here's what's going on in back to our downtown for a second. So we're a $15 million investor on a $100 million portfolio. Our central business district was worth that. Asheville didn't get a new building downtown until 2008. So you see these steps here that happen. This is the value gain of buildings that were already just sitting there. So by uncorking and fixing those upper stories, you produce wealth. Now that happened because of the municipal investment by the city and the county to double down their efforts in fix downtown. Now, as you all know, there's politics. This is one of my favorite people in town. This is Chris Peterson. And these are his actual campaign ads from flyers from the 1990s, where he's complaining about that municipal investment in parking garages, streetscape projects, beautification, $26 million. I like this, downtown development for bureaucrats instead of water, sewer, streets for our citizens. Y'all got people like Chris? Everybody's got people like Chris. And that's fair, that's fine. Chris is entitled to his opinion. $26 million is a lot of money. So let's go back and look at the math. If you invest $26 million on a $100 million asset and that grows to $500 million, is investing 26 and yielding $430 million, is that a good return on investment? Yes. All right, can we get past that? And you're not going to stop people like Chris. Chris has a website now with fire and brimstone. I love how the mayor's getting hit in the head with a lightning bolt. I asked the mayor, I said, Mayor, is that a liquor drink that you got there? She goes, yeah, it should be. Oh, by the way, he misspelled charlatans. But you know, you're going to have people that do this. They're entitled to their opinions. They're not entitled to facts. And really, what this is, it's a fissure or a breakdown of understanding what civics are. I've got this kid's book from grade school that I found in a garage sale. It's a teacher's guide. It's called In the City, the Town, and the Country. So you have the city, the town, and the country. And so it's a third grade textbook from 1959. You see down here on the bottom. So in kindergarten, you learn about your house. First grade, the school. Second grade, the neighborhood. Third grade, you learn about regional planning. Did y'all do that? It's like 1959. We used to learn this stuff. In the teacher's guide, it says things like this. So the first half of the book is teaching you about how to deal with these little kids. It's stuff like this. While patterns vary from state to state, counties are usually responsible for education, library, health, welfare, etc., agriculture, blah, blah, blah. In studying the functions performed by your county, you will no doubt find there is a duplication of services, an overlapping of jurisdictions, and a lack of coordination between the county and the local communities within that. Y'all have that problem? Like every community I go to, there's this disconnect, and the very two governments that are sitting there managing the same entity, basically. But again, it's the civic breakdown that happens. So this is one of the lesson plans. It's very much one of those, like those old Dick and Jane books in kind of coloring. It's painfully white. It's somewhat misogynistic. The girls are shoved out in the hallway for some reason, but you read about what's going on. There's a new factory gets built, even more kids that go to school, right? You can see what's happening in the picture when you have overcrowding because there's more kids that go to school. So you ask your third graders right here in blue. This is the question to ask your third graders. Give 4 good reasons for building a new school. And your third graders talk about what? Everybody should have a chair. That's equity. Maybe get another teacher, split the class in 2. That's called infrastructure. All right. On the right, you read about Mr. Canfield, who lived next door to the Allens. He said he didn't want to build a new school. Our taxes are too high now. If we build a new school, we'll need more teachers and everything else. We'll have to pay still higher taxes. That is indeed a true statement. So you ask in blue, the third graders, why would some people have to pay higher taxes, and why are some people against paying higher taxes? So this is a reasonable, rational discussion that third graders can have about the need in society in paying for stuff, and that some people don't like to pay for things. It's that simple. So you have to work that out. And we've divorced ourselves from the ability to have a civic conversation. I know adults that can't have this conversation anymore on both the right and the left. And it's just amazing to me. And it really comes down to this statement here in the document, that remember too, many children, whether urban and rural and regardless of region, are tragically limited in their knowledge of their world, and their world is largely the space in which they live and operate. So what we have is the citizen only understands where they drop their kid off at school, how they get to work, where do they get their groceries, and if there's a problem in any of that, all of a sudden it's the mayor or the county manager's problem to solve it, because we don't understand what these things are. In a city, to me, is a finite, in a county as well, is a finite boundary of land that has to be managed like a very large real estate development project. And it's not to say it's got to be capitalistic, but by law, it's a corporation. So if you look up the word incorporate in the Oxford American Dictionary, it says to constitute a company, a city, or other organization as a legal corporation. Cities and counties have charters. They have corporate documents, basically. It's not just your city, your county, your state, also our country. Joe Biden said this on the Stephen Colbert show. The United States is the largest corporation in the world. So I'm such a nerd, I went and looked it up. If you all want it, there's the code on the bottom of the slide that it lists us as a federal corporation. It doesn't say that we're capitalistic. It's a social corporation. We're all basically shareholders in this entity together, and we have to work it out together. So my city at $14 billion worth of taxable value is 6 times the value of Ted Turner. You think Ted Turner is going to make all of his decisions based off who's complaining on some, Facebook politics site that's local? Of course not. So why do we pay attention to that? Take that input. That's good input. But we have to have a conversation about the cash flow, how this operates, what can we afford, what's our long-term debt obligation, and explain it to the citizens so they can understand it. So we've done this all across the country, 35 different states, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. And when you take the data of that whole data pile and just kind of shove it together, this is what we see. For every dollar of taxes somebody in the county single family is paying to the county per acre, their brother in a city single family is paying about 5 times that to the same county. Here's the Walmart, here's the mall. This is a 2-story building on Main Street, 3-story building, 6-story building. So I'm not talking skyscrapers. These are all under high-rise threshold. And what you see is when you get to that old mixed-use stuff, it starts to jump up exponentially. And that's the reality of how our tax system works. If you stack stories, you're stacking your dollar bills. Conversely, if you do cheap buildings, you pay nothing. And some people are just like, well, you just hate Walmart. And if that's your takeaway, you're totally missing the point. In fact, I presented at the International Association of Assessing Officers Conference, which was kind of wild. I don't know if you've ever been to an assessor's conference, but it makes a city managers conference feel like Burning Man by comparison. It's probably the squarest conference I've ever been to. Super awesome people. But imagine 3,000 assessors. It's not the most dynamic crowd on the planet. But this guy got up and did the keynote presentation one morning on how cheap Walmarts are. And it was amazing to watch him do this presentation because I'm thinking this is brilliant. He's got 3,000 assessors in one room. So in one meeting, he's getting all of his property taxes driven down in one meeting. That's efficient. Now assessors, in their defense, they're agnostic. If it's a pile of junk building, it's a pile of junk. They can't assign new value to it. So I was sort of having a coronary because I'm just like, this is insane. Because the average Walmart consumes more in police services than it pays in property taxes. And I went up to the microphone and I asked Mr. Terrell, I said, Mr. Terrell, what's the useful life of one of your buildings? And he quite honestly shot back 15, maybe 20 years. We designed the building to depreciate it as fast as possible. And then we'll hang on to that and we'll just go ahead and build another building and depreciate it down again. So some of you all may have an experience where you've actually seen the second Walmart come in after that first 15-year life cycle. And that's all I ask is as a community, as a municipality, as a corporation, just make sure that that's a conscious vote. You know, it's like that's the life cycle of a cat in your community. If that's okay with you to have an investment in your community that only lasts 15 years, awesome. By the way, I'm a dog person. No offense to cat people, but I'm just trying to make a point on life cycle in the community. And what I would argue is that people don't see it because we haven't been having the conversation this way. Additionally, the information usually isn't presented in a way that we can understand it. So this is where smart technologies come in, better use of technologies, but also detach yourself from your municipality for a second and think about other industries. So I can go to the medical fields and it's not that much voodoo to get an MRI scan of my brain. And when my doctor explains to me that my brainstem activity is the blue stuff and my creative thought process is the green stuff, I get it. I'm like, all right, now I see how my brain operates. I can see inside my own head. So if that happens, can I see inside the economics of my community this way? So let's show you how that happens. So back to Asheville, here's my county, 350 square miles. I've got non-taxable. This is Mount Mitchell up here. So it's non-taxable. You just gray it out. It's not paying taxes. I don't care about it. Green is low value. Green up here. Purple is high value. It's over $76 million worth of value. This is Biltmore Estate right here. That one parcel is worth $100 million, which is impressive, but it's also 8,000 acres and 180,000 square foot houses sitting on top of it. So does anybody have a 180,000 square foot house on 8,000 acres? No, that's the biggest gas tank. So rather than doing things on a miles per tank basis or total value, let's do value per acre. The map just changed, and let me just show it to you in 3D. So when I'm having a discussion with folks out in the county, actually one of our state legislators called our downtown a cesspool of sin, and I was on the downtown association, and we were all like, really? That's pretty insulting. And it's because of this bias of people out in the county where they think the city is evil or whatever, and it's like, all right, fine. They also think they're paying for supporting downtown, and we're like, well, here's Fairview. I've got friends out here in Fairview that think they're paying a lot of taxes. Now, compared to Hickory Nut Gap, yeah, if that's all they know, they have no idea what we're paying in county taxes. Remember, this is the county model. We can see what's going on in downtown. We can also see over here in Black Mountain. So you don't have to be downtown Asheville. You could be little old Black Mountain. Look at this little main street popping up. There's a little baby mountain versus our big mountain. So remember, this is the entire county. We're all paying county taxes. So let's all talk about how to raise revenue for our community. Additionally, all the sprawly stuff on the south side is not really amount to a whole hill of beans there. It's just all kind of flat. And it's because by design, that's the way our tax system works. So we have to show people this and don't just talk about it. And you know, in my history of doing this, people are like, well, that's North Carolina, we're different. It's like, no, you're not. This is Kansas City, Kansas, and Kansas City, Missouri. And you can see Kansas City, Missouri's downtown. You can also see this thing called Country Club Plaza. You can have multiple downtowns. And here's Kansas City, Kansas downtown. So have that. It's a polynucleated city. You can do that as opposed to the conventional sprawl that's all around it. This is Manchester, New Hampshire. Brevard, North Carolina. This is a community of 8,000 people. Yeah, little villages could do this kind of stuff. And when the mayor saw this, he goes, "Well, I could tell where downtown is." His name is Mayor Jimmy, by the way. He's awesome. He's been mayor for like 30 years. But this is their sprawl right here. So even in this little town, this is the Walmart, the Lowe's, the Kmart. You know, it's just not really producing anything, and they have all of that extra infrastructure and stormwater runoff off very low value. What about Georgia? We did a project in Fayetteville, Georgia. This is Fayette County, and this is Peachtree City on the south side, which is, you know, it's kind of hot, but it's not really nothing compared to even little downtown Fayetteville. But check out what's going on the other side of Fayetteville over here with this stuff in purple. So little Fayetteville, actually, just because y'all might be familiar with the area, this is where the Peachtree Strip is down in here, where all the golf carts drive around at the shopping area. This is a trailer park over here. A trailer park is actually as productive as Peachtree City. Anyway, so in Fayetteville, look past this one purple spike right here is a doctor's office at the hospital, which is an anomaly. I want y'all to focus more on this thing here. This is Trilith, which is that used to be called Pinewood Forest Studios, and they built a village right across the street. This is it right here on the right. These things are pulling, it's peaking out at $12 million an acre at the top, averaging about $6 million an acre. And just by comparison, the Walmart's average is about $300,000 an acre. So with that, like the average value of this village is 20 times a Walmart. And it's not that bad to look at. I mean, these things are selling like hotcakes. So back to the avenue at Peachtree City, that's only $2 million an acre. And this is the whole land area. So just in downtown Fayetteville, $7 million an acre for Twisted Taco on Main Street. So 0.4 acres of Twisted Taco would equal the 16-acre avenue at Peachtree City. So here's the parcel of Twisted Taco next to the parcel of Peachtree City. So basically you need 3 and a smidge of that building to equal all of that land area. So when you think of that land is precious because you can't make more of it. But also, when you look at those pictures, imagine the amount of frontage and infrastructure that you have to pay for that goes to servicing those properties as well. So you just get a bigger bang for the buck off the stuff that we used to build kind of commonplace 100 years ago. Retail, I know that y'all do SPLOST. You can match retail this way. Although your state makes it really difficult to track, but when you're negotiating your SPLOST, ask the state revenue office to give you your retail stuff. But I'll show you a state where they're actually more transparent about it. This is Minnesota. This is where the county with Minneapolis in it, and you can pretty much see where Minneapolis is. But we map their retail. This is Mall of America. I was asking my analyst, it's just retail taxes. I was like, what's going on with the Mall of America? Where's downtown? He's like, oh, it's up over here. So this is downtown's retail production compared to Mall of America. So Mall of America is 100% monolithically a retail environment, and it's being crushed by downtown that has offices, residential, all this other stuff going on. And it's that complexity and diversity of land uses that it actually gives you the bigger bang for the buck because there's more transactions happening as opposed to just on the weekends or a couple of nights during the week at Mall of America. So just be aware of this stuff. And I would argue just put it on a map, and there is a geospatial relationship. This is all spatial analysis. By the way, I know this joke doesn't work for anyone under the age of 35, but I like to use it anyway. It's spatial. And also not all retail is the same. So I'll show you an example of this in Durango, Colorado. This is Colorado. The cities get mostly the retail taxes. The county get mostly the property taxes. So this is the property tax model, and we did them as boundary areas. Here's downtown. Here's South Durango. This is where the mall, the Home Depot, the Walmart, all that's down here. So the county should be all over helping Durango do more downtown because the county doesn't have to service downtown, yet the county's getting a lot of property taxes out of it. So if they could chip in for a dog park or whatever's necessary, they'll get a bigger bang for the buck out of that because they don't have to police it. They're not paying, they're not handling the water. Here's the retail taxes. So downtown's still winning with retail taxes and the strip isn't catching up. And then here's total productivity, jobs. I mean, any way you slice it and dice it. And we had 2 property owners that shared their books. And when they do that, we can show their information. So This is, they wanted apples to apples. This is Tim and Peter. Peter has a bookstore. They're both weird. He likes to talk about honey. Tim has a coffee shop, but for some reason he sells all this kitchen equipment. They're entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are a little bit zany. But anyway, so here are the two retail uses side by side. So we got Main Street Retail versus Walmart. This is their footprint. This is their property taxes. So who would have thought that these things are, what is that, 15 times the property tax production to the county on the right, and 7 times the retail sales? That's impressive. And then let's talk about jobs. So just this really simple analytic, you can say, okay, well, what's more productive for our community, the blue stuff or the gray stuff? And just be agnostic about it. This is way more productive. Now let's talk about the next level of economics. Who's paying their retail sector employee more per hour? Is it going to be the coffee shop and the bookstore, or is it going to be the Walmart? It's probably going to be the coffee shop and the bookstore. It might be not much, maybe a nickel or a quarter more. But what you find with local businesses, they tend to be more supportive of local staff because they mostly know them. They probably know their parents too. So that's one side of the economic equation. Now let's take it to the next level. Who's hiring the local website designer, the local attorney, the local accountant, local services in the community? Is it the blue side or is it the gray side? It's going to be the blue side. And again, this isn't to vilify Walmart. It's to understand how the system works. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Walmart has actually done a great job of perfecting how not to spend money in your community. That's their role. That's good business. But is it good business for you? And that's the only question I want to leave you with this example. And when you're running out of money for the greenway, the art teacher, or the dancing traffic cop, it's not that you don't have the money, it's that it's sequestered in other land uses that are operating at a deficit. And we have biases that we operate in. And actually, one of my best favorite examples of that was over in Gwinnett County, where they literally told me that they don't want density. And y'all know Gwinnett County. Lawrenceville is the county seat. And they gave me strict orders when I was to do my presentation. I was not allowed to say 4 words. These were dirty words in Gwinnett County. I couldn't say the word urban, city, town, and municipal in my presentation. And I was like, all right. They're like, look, Joe, we're rural people here. We're not urban. And I was like, all right, well, what do I say about my company? Do I just say I'm from 3? Like, what do I do? But I was, playing along. And as we started doing the analysis, I called up my client. And I was like, Kelly, y'all are 812,000 people. And she goes, yeah, but honey, look, we're 460 square miles. We're huge. I was like, all right. She's like, we're outside the Beltway. We're rural. And I was like, well, okay, I can do math. When you divide 460 square miles into the 812,000 people, that's about 1,900 people per square mile. That's the density of Gwinnett County, which is less dense than DeKalb. But we had all of this data, and I was doing a presentation for their community, and I was like, all right, I'll just put it out here. Y'all are 600 people per square mile denser than Mecklenburg County. And I turned to the audience, I said, what's in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina? And somebody goes, Charlotte. I'm like, yes. Yeah, they've produced a Charlotte with less density than you. This is Nashville, Tennessee, and they're, what is that, 600 people less dense than you? How is it that these two places have a professional football team and the cities of Nashville and Charlotte? And I never heard of Lawrenceville before I did this project. And you don't have the Gwinnett County Cowboys. Like, what's up with that? Here's Austin, Texas. They're half your density. Wake County, Asheville. This is Chapel Hill, North Carolina. This is what rural looks like. Whatever you all did, you're not rural. And when we did your model, I turned to my analyst. I'm like, turn it on its side. That seems a little weird. So he turned it on its side. It looks like a 1970s shag carpet. It's like the same thing, straight from end to end. They never cultivated this. This is why my brain was blown away. This is Orange County, North Carolina, which is rural, but I can see Chapel Hill, Carrboro, and Hillsboro, and I can see the downtowns of these little things here, here, and here. This is new urbanism over here. So in the data, I can see what's going on. I can't tell what's happening here. So the most potent building in all of Gwinnett County is this, the Bank of Beaufort. This building was left by their great-grandparents. They have not achieved a higher producing building than this one in all of Gwinnett County. This is topping out at $8 million an acre. So here you go. This is the most potent building in your community. All of these places are less dense, producing much more wealth at their peak value, but also throughout their model. So just to kind of drive the point home, we made an economic heart monitor and put Davidson County, Tennessee, Travis County, Texas, and Gwinnett County, Georgia at the same scale and pulse them out to see how their heart monitor looks. And there you go. So we got a peak value of 192 million in Nashville. The less dense Austin is 476 million an acre, and Lawrenceville's flatlining at 8. And they still resisted. They're just like, well, but we don't want density. I'm like, well, you're already dense. You can't change that. And I said, look, y'all have all the same horizontal infrastructure as these places because you're just as wide, you're just as much area as those places are. You've built the area out, and you have none of the value to pay for it. Are you guys going broke yet? And this is 2014. They're like, oh yeah, we're broke. And I was like, well, how did that happen? And they just looked at me stunned. You know, the sad part is they've built themselves into this position and now they have to change. This is where it gets super expensive. Let me put it a different way. Imagine if you brought all of your furniture in your house, you just moved into a new house, and then you decide to put in carpeting. It's much more difficult to put the carpeting in after the furniture's there. So how you arrange your community has direct financial consequences down the road. And the other pushback is like, well, you just want big buildings everywhere. It's like, let's go back to Gwinnett County. This is Doug's Boots. Doug's Boots is like 10 feet wide. It's pulling $400,000 an acre in taxable value. So there's Doug's. Just around Lawrenceville in this main square, there's this place called the Bench Jeweler. And my favorite, this little building here that's like 6 feet wide called the Bath Body Bar. Pulling, and if you look at the tax rolls, it's just $17,000. But per acre, it's 1.7 million of value, 1.2 and $400,000 an acre. To compare that to the Sugarloaf Mall, Doug's Boots, if you just had 80 acres of Doug's Boots, it would equal the 113 acres Sugarloaf Mall. So Doug's Boots is more productive. In fact, we have a whole portfolio of these that we jokingly call the Little Lebowski Urban Achievers in reference to the Big Lebowski movie. But anyway, it's an inside joke. But in Peoria, we saw one. This is Gary Morris's law office here, sandwiched between a parking garage and this building right here. Gary's pulling about $3.2 million an acre, so he gets an award. But putting Gary aside, $3.2 million an acre is almost as productive as the biggest building, most valuable building in all of downtown Peoria, the Chase Manhattan Bank at 3.3 million. Or put another way, 6 acres of Gary's building would equal the 3-acre Caterpillar World Headquarters. And there's this factor of city building, that this has been the way that we built things for basically since the beginning of time. This is the Skinny House in Boston. It's 10 feet wide. It's $62 million of value per acre. I mean, I wouldn't live in it, but somebody moved in. These are their Zillow pictures from when they bought their house. But it's paying taxes. This is an old dollhouse in Alexandria. It was built for this house right here. It's actually smaller than a smart car. And it was interesting, it was built for the 2 daughters that lived in this house. And when the daughters grew up, one of them moved into the dollhouse, and it's been there ever since. It's 356 square feet of land. It's pulling $64 million an acre. And so frequently I'll find that cities have minimum building sizes and they're down minimum lot sizes, which is kind of silly. It's like, why would you do that? You're basically eliminating the ability to get wealth when you make minimum sizes. So this is 44 million, 64 million, 67 million. Again, and for hundreds of years, it's producing this kind of wealth. This is a mixed use building. It's on 634 square feet in downtown Georgetown. It's tiny. There's a person right there. But it's offices above retail, and it's doing just fine. Now that's the revenue side. What about the cost? You know, the other thing is people can be growing, but they're growing in a not so fiscally prudent way. We've been through many communities that have done this. Lancaster, California is one of my favorites. It's up and over the mountain from Los Angeles. These people are super awesome, and they figured it out. They know that they have a problem, and they're trying to turn it around. But they're very far away from Los Angeles, about 30 minutes, 35, 40 minutes drive. They annexed a bunch of land and just started building, and they didn't really grow their downtown up. Their downtown should be bigger than what it is on this model. They're 160,000 people, and they have like one building over 4 stories tall. You can see it in the model. But the thing that really alarmed us is that they have 953 miles of roads in their in their portfolio. This is what they own in roads. Now, when roads get put down, you're obligated to rebuild them every 50 years if you take them on as a municipality. Roads don't last forever. So I also don't know what 953 miles looks like, so we put it on a map. They have enough roads to go from Los Angeles to Portland. So imagine this. Could you imagine having a vote to build a road from Los Angeles to Portland if you were Lancaster, California? You'd never consciously vote that. So why would you do that? And it's just, these are death by 1,000 cuts, little decisions. The other thing is inside your municipal budget standards, it's hidden from you because people list their roads as assets. I did a project with Chuck Marone from Strong Towns in Louisiana, and we sat down with the finance officer, and I said to Lori, Lori, look, my computer's an asset. If I had a delivery vehicle, that's an asset, or if I had a real estate, those are assets. I can sell you the real estate, the van, and the computer. Can you sell your roads to Baton Rouge? And she goes, well, no. And Chuck goes, that's a liability. And she goes, well, but our CAFR standards. And I said, Lori, look, we're not going to follow your municipal standards. No one's going to show up from the Government Finance Association and give me a demerit. We're going to actually cash flow you how you actually flow. And one of the things that I'm conscious to this for is because in real estate, it's normal to say when you manage an asset, you have to build a reserve account to replace the asset's issues. Everything has a life cycle. So those air conditioners have a life cycle on them all. So when you know what their life cycle is, you know that you have to replace them. So if I own this mall, I know I have to shell out $85,000 per air handler, and also get a crew for a helicopter and the crew to be out there. So every 15 to 20 years, I need to squirrel away enough money to pay for that. So I need $205,000 every 20 years. And so we put it into our cash flow pro forma to squirrel away rent to replace that stuff. So let's do the same things with the roads you own. So these are all their roads. We stopped them in 2016 and said, okay, your great grandparents built a bunch of roads in the early 1900s. Everybody went to sleep until World War II. But you can't help but notice what happened in 1953 with all of those lane miles. Well, guess what? That comes back to haunt your parents' generation in 1983 with the first rebuild. Now, what they did in 1983 is they annexed more land, they let out more development. Well, you brought more roads with that. So you can see the little blue bar right next to it. So guess what? This comes back for a second rebuild in 2013 and brings along with it the new stuff. This is why you just went through a shock. You know, this is the stuff that you own. It just comes back to haunt you. So let's just do a rebuild of your whole system of what you're carrying. This is what it looks like. Now notice the problem. Remember, we didn't add another road in this model. So that first wave looks unbelievably stupid when you look back at it. And then they just went ahead and said, all right, well, we're different. We're going to go ahead and just do it again because this is what Americans are now. We all love our cars. Awesome. You know, I've got cars, no problem. But it's compounding on itself and getting bigger and bigger. This is the problem that every American city is going through right now, is the compounding effects of the amount of asphalt that we put down and its useful life compared to our revenue sources. And so we just flush their money into their system to show them where they run out of money. So green is what they can afford, red is what they run out, where they run out of money. They only can afford 50% of their revenue. So they have to make difficult decisions. Our recommendation to them was let some of the roads out here revert to dirt so that they can afford to redo some of the roads on the inside, but they need to share this with their citizens so they can be aware that there's a serious problem here. Because we've been lulled into this, somebody else will solve this in the future. It's an American paradigm of buying down on debt and hoping that it all works out in the future. We're gamblers. Okay, I'm not going to just give you all of these depressing stories without some way out of this. And also a more detailed analysis in Eugene, Oregon. This is their revenue model, and they asked us to do a full ROI. So this is their whole city floating in a lake with the revenue coming out of the lake at the top, and below the water line is their expenses. So we just basically ran an assessment of all of the hard costs of roads, stormwater, sewers, the stuff that's physical, that you wouldn't be able to live out here if it weren't for that stuff. So this is the debt load of what you owe in the community. This is the revenue up here. So this is your expenses and your revenue. You net your expenses against your revenue, have what's in the black versus what's in the red. Again, nomenclature that we would use in real estate. Here's the top of the model. And you can see downtown's doing well, so do more of that. And if you lift this up, like you're looking for a salamander under a rock, this is the subsidy spread across the model. And these are the choices that are basically implicitly baked into the way that we run our municipal finance. So just be aware of that, understand where you're leaking your money. And so we did a much deeper analysis, but this is a really simple way of looking at it. We call it the Brady Bunch slide. We have residential low density, medium density, high density, mixed use low, medium, high, commercial low, medium, and high density. And these are the sticker prices. And this isn't to fault anybody. It's not to say that single family housing that's low density is evil. It's just to be honest about the fact that it's subsidized, and just allow the citizen to be aware of that. That it's like, and I understand people are gonna say, well, I want that. It's like, well, yeah, I want to be 6 foot tall and have a full head of hair. That's really expensive. I want to eat lobster every day. That's expensive. So just be aware of that and what you can float. And this isn't new information. This actually goes back to the Nixon administration in 1973, published this document called The Cost of Sprawl. This is a problem that we're dealing with. We've been dealing with for over 50 years. So be aware of that. And there's going to be a resistance. When you're given that subsidy for 4 generations, people want to hang on to that subsidy. I get it. But not for 80% of your diet. I can't have pizza for 80% of my diet. So you have to be smart about it. You have to, I'm not saying don't do it, just keep it in check, and also balance out your infrastructure. So this is inside planning world, it's called the transect, but it's from the center of your city, density tapering outward. So you want to balance that out. You just don't want to have any one of these tree rings consuming too much. So go back to the model. Again, not saying no to single family, but saying you should build more downtown buildings so you can afford more single family. Also, go over here to Crescent Village here. You see a little, again, the model will tell you what's productive. So there's a little something right there. So why don't you just find 4 more spots to do those, like little baby downtowns out in the neighborhoods, little mini places that can start to cultivate wealth to allow you to afford your city. Again, it's being more creative about this, and also understanding what incentives are baked into the system. So there's a lot of suburban incentives that are baked into the system that we're just not even paying attention to. And I'll cut to my favorite one. This is a model of taking the buildings off the dirt and just looking at the dirt value per acre. This is Cheyenne, Wyoming, and this is just dirt value per acre. So you see this neighborhood up here in the upper left, everybody's blue. That's the way it should be. That's kind of normal. Everybody's got the same value per acre, but we do these because we want to check to see how the assessors do in their math, and we can see some anomalies over here in this neighborhood, if you can see my cursor. But let's put that aside for a second. We're also looking for policy issues, and this is my favorite right here, this big blue rectangle right there. That's clearly the mall. But when I presented to the community, I said, what's going on here where this dirt is $15,000 an acre, and when you cross the street in the same zoning category, you see it turns orange, that's 40,000. How does land double in value when you cross the street? And the tax assessor raised her hand, and she just yells out into the room, you don't understand. And I was like, okay, what am I missing? And she goes, well, these people have more land. The more land you have, the lower the value. The mayor just started laughing. And I was like, really? The more land I get, you give me a discount? And she goes, yeah, that's our standard. There's less people that can afford larger tracts of land. And I'm like, great, okay. There's less people that can afford larger diamonds. Do they get a discount on a larger diamond? Is it cheaper per carat? And she goes, well, that's different. I'm like, how is it different? I think land's more limited than diamonds. We can find more diamonds. And I said, secondly, this has 3 miles of infrastructure around it. This person only got 200 feet. They got more infrastructure. You paid more for that land to be as cool as it is. And she goes, we don't count infrastructure as part of the valuation. I said, so you never want your money back? She goes, well, that's not our concern. So just by the silos of our government, think about how that disables you when your assessor's out there undervaluing land that has the biggest infrastructure commitments to it. Now, who's got the more police services? Who's got more fire services? Well, it's going to be the bigger parcel because there's going to be more commerce going on. So you're essentially subsidizing that development. And so the reason I was at the assessors conference was to ask them. Their magazine is called Fair and Equitable. And so I'm presenting this to them. And I said, how is this fair and how is this equitable? Now, to their credit, they're like, it's not. I'm like, where did this standard come from? Did Moses deliver this to you? And they started laughing. They thought this joke was great. And like, we have no idea. You might need to talk to Larry Clark. And I talked to this guy, Larry Clark, and I said, can you see how this would manipulate the market? He's like, yeah, we probably need to change that. This is the world that you're operating in. This is how you're being undermined by policies and random arbitrary decisions that are essentially disconnecting your cash flow. So finally, I'll show you one more subsidy before I close. This is in Indianapolis, Marion County. We did a transit analysis for this thing called the Blue Line. So they want to build up the Blue Line, and we do these CAT scans so we can help the planners see what's happening that's hot. There's a little purple spike here, there's red stuff here. So it's like, do more of that and thicken this thing up. Now, the complicated thing here was this was run by the transit agency, and the city wasn't a partner in it. So we had to like try to get the city to understand there was a zoning problem. So here's the corridor is a thermometer. There's about 10,000 acres. Only 5% of it's vacant, which is okay. That seems tough, but it's really not, because there's 11% of the land in the corridor. The dirt is worth more than the building on top of it. So now you're looking at 16% of land that should be changed, because you're basically going backward on it. The community was upset because they don't want change, and we had to relax them by letting them know that close to 50% of the corridor is just not going to change. So that's your historic preservation, that's your important buildings, whatever. And it's not just going to, like, everything's going to be mowed down by a bulldozer. But you have about 35% that are buildings where some of them actually should change. They're not important, they should grow up. So the planning process was about picking a line in here somewhere. But below that line, you're talking 4,000 acres of land. That's a lot of land to change. Now we did an analysis of Marion County. Here's all the buildings, here's the parking. So you're looking at about 27% of the county's land uses and parking. Or another way of looking at it, here's the county, here's the parking, here's the buildings, here's the roads, here's everything else, berms, buffers, backyards, parks, whatever. They also have water, but water doesn't pay taxes, so it's outside the box. This is how the money comes in. So here's a couple of things that show you the subsidy. We know roads and parking, if you look at their area, it's about the same. So they consume the same amount of the county. When you look at the value of the roads are about $18 billion worth of liability. Parking's only giving you about 0.5 billion. So this red stuff will never pay the taxes to cover the road stuff. So you have to dip into the building fund to pay for the roads. I would argue that the value of parking should be at least commensurate to cover the cost of the roads, because we know who's using the roads, that would be called cars, and we know who's using the parking, that would be called cars. So rather than or just vote to say we're going to subsidize the parking, rather than just bake it into the math, make it conscious so the citizens understand it. Secondly, into the corridor, we did the same thing and did a transit little cookie cutter. It's about a 5-minute walk from the center to the edge. So this is the shed that the bus services. Let's drop downtown out. And here's its parking to building to road ratio. Now you probably don't remember countywide, but this kind of blew my mind. They actually have more land dedicated to parking inside the city in the bus corridor than they do countywide. That is just lunacy. And I said to them, I said, look, this is this Indianapolis 500. You have 3 times Indianapolis 500 in surface parking in the middle of your city. Secondly, this is your average buildings in Marion County. Here's Marion of Marion County. You have about 1,200 square feet of buildings per person, 2.5 parking spaces, and about 1,000 square feet of roads. When this gets built, it gets priced. So the assessors are pricing buildings at about $52 a square foot, parking's about 75 cents. Your roads are costing you $22 a square foot in front of your building and in front of your parking. Yet your parking is paying 71 times less taxes than the building, yet your cost is the same. So that's your differential of subsidy. If you're paying the same rate and you have less value, you're paying less into the system, even though your cost is the same. So just to make the point home, I was like, let's just put half the taxes into a piggy bank and see if it'll pay off the road. So at half taxes from this building, it'll take 42 years to pay off the road in front of it. It'll take 3,000 years for the parking to pay off the road in front of it. Or put another way, it will never pay for the roads because roads only last 50 years. So just I don't care if that's your decision, just make sure you write that down and you can afford to make that decision. Secondly, let's look at your data. So these are the households countywide that have no vehicles, 1 vehicle per household, 2 vehicles per household, and 3 vehicles per household. So when you're looking at countywide, 60% or sorry, 50% of the county have no in 1 car, right? 50%, there's the data. When you look at the inside the bus corridor, 60% have 1 car or less. So not everyone has a car. So why do you have inside your zoning requirements 2 parking spaces per residential unit, particularly inside this bus corridor? That seems a little silly. Why would you force a developer to build that extra stuff when people just, the data shows they don't need it? And then finally, to close, you really should be worried about your roads. They have enough roads to pave a road from Indianapolis to Anchorage, and they run out of money somewhere in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. This is not good. Now, why does this matter? You know, if you're saying no to something, that means you're saying yes to something else. And I'll close with another Georgia example. So over in Johns Creek, which is over in Fulton County. So here's Fulton County. This is the Johns Creek area up here at the kind of northeastern tip. I showed them the Gwinnett County presentation, and it was kind of funny that they were laughing the whole time at Gwinnett County, like how silly the Gwinnett County people were. And I said, well, here you are with Gwinnett County added to the model. Do you look more like Gwinnett County or do you look like other parts of Fulton County? You look just like Gwinnett County to me. And they got mad at me and I'm like, I'm sorry, it's data. Like actually you look worse than Gwinnett County. You guys are more green than Gwinnett County. And what was mind blowing to me about Johns Creek is here they are. Here's Asheville. We're the same population as they are. This is their model. This is my model. So we went ahead and colored our model because our taxable value, our purples are at a much higher realm than theirs are. So we colored ours to their model, which is what makes it look like that. So when you put us side by side, we have a whole heck of a lot more purple than they could ever imagine. We're only 5,000 people more than them. We're bigger in area. That means we're less dense than they are. So Johns Creek is more dense than Asheville, North Carolina. Our peak value per acre at the top of our model is 47 million. Theirs is only 6 million. Their total value is 10 billion, and we're at 14 billion now. So you tell me what's better value in the community and how to create it. And this is about using data to make sure that you make decisions. So Johns Creek, they became something, but they really need to figure out how to change. So just to close, we call this methodology, like we in-house call it geo-accounting. We're going to put accounting information on a map so that people can see what's happening. And like your accountant, you know, your accountant doesn't care if you buy a boat, right? Your accountant cares if you can afford a boat. So go out and buy a boat, knock yourself out. But if you're making $10 an hour, it's probably not a good decision. And also for every municipality, you have to know where you're leaking your money. You have to visualize it, find out where they are. Is it through your zoning policies? Is it your fee structures? Is it because of just internal practices that can be managed better? Is it miscommunication? Or is it biased thinking? Sometimes we run into this all the time with assessors. They have biases that they're applying all over the place, and it undermines your ability to grow your revenues. But when you put it on a map and just don't pass judgment until you see the information, you're easy to move. It's easier to move forward, particularly with an elected official audience that, you know, let's face it, it's a lot of information for them to take in, and they need to be communicated more clearly and more quickly because they don't have master's degree in urban studies. And I use this term with all respect, but they win a popularity contest. You know, it's just they're trying to do the right thing, but they have day jobs, they're busy, and when you can't just drop a spreadsheet on them, that's just not fair. So respect the political leaders' ability to try to do the right thing, but they have to be given the information the way they understand it. And finally, I'll recommend Strong Towns and Chuck Marone. He wrote a book about a lot of this stuff. Chuck's doing amazing work. He's got a website that has a lot of this stuff in it, and we work with him a lot. We think he's great. And do your math. So thank you.